Hi, everyone. It's Chris Littlefield. Excited to have you join me today. And I couldn't be more excited to introduce you to Zach Mercurio, who Zach is an author, researcher, leadership development facilitator specializing in purposeful leadership, mattering, and meaning at work. He advises leaders and organizations worldwide to practice for building cultures that promote well-being, motivation, and performance. Zach holds a PhD in organizational learning and performance from Colorado State University. Is that right, Zach?
That is right.
And is also one of Simon Sinek's Optimist instructors, teaching a top-rated course on creating meaning at work. And now that I've read your bio, what we're going to be most talking about today is your book, The Power of Mattering. But Zach, what's not included in your bio that people are often surprised to learn about you?
Well, not surprised, but I have two boys, ages 10 and 7 right now. I live in Colorado with two adopted dogs, and now via my 7-year-old, a pet snake named Striker. So I'm a snake parent as well. Yeah, we can talk about that off the line. But yeah, so those two things. So I mean, my life is always very calm.
Always, of course. And there's nothing else going on. And
Nothing
and
else.
we were just chatting before we got on today. It's like both being parents of young kids, and I don't even told you I have a 9-year-old at home who thinks she's 15 already. And the irony of being people who talk about making sure that people feel mattered and then having to apply it ourselves in our own lives. And so where does it come up and where do you see it at home as a parent of why does mattering matter and where do we get it wrong at home?
Well, mattering is the belief that we're significant to people, that we're seen, heard, valued, needed. And to feel significant to someone, we need their attention, we need their time. Hurry and care can't coexist. We need, right? We need space. We need to be asked and given power by being asked like exploratory questions about our life and not just being told to do things. And so obviously that plays out in life. I mean, when kids feel that they matter, and here's the theory that I know, when kids
Yeah.
feel that they matter to an adult, they develop a secure base from which they can launch out, experiment, take risks, learn. They become more innovative. They become better at relationships. That the same is true like in work. It's the same thing. It's just adult attachment. Like psychological safety, for example, the belief that you can speak up without
Yeah.
fear is adult attachment. It's knowing you have a secure base that you matter enough to, someone you matter enough to, so you can go out, screw up, make mistakes, fail, learn, and you have somebody you already matter to independent of what you do or don't do. So it is so connected to parenting, but we think we're better at it than we are. I mean, this is something I battle in my work all the time is when it comes to something that's soft, been called soft for 50
Yeah.
years. Anytime you say something soft or simple, we're susceptible to an overconfidence bias. We think we're better at it than we are. The same is true with me. I mean, I was just telling you, the one thing I talk about is asking exploratory questions of people and making sure you give people the power to share their lived experience
Yeah.
before you evaluate them. So an exploratory question versus an evaluative question is exploratory question is, hey, what was an effort you were proud of at soccer practice today? An
Yeah.
evaluative question was, did you work hard at soccer practice today? Did you hustle? Right?
Did you work on that thing I
Sometimes
told you to work on?
would you get that done by this Friday? What's the status on that? Right? Anytime we ask an evaluative question of people, we get a self-defensive protective answer. And so one of the things that I was just reflecting on is I was traveling a bit, and so I always call my kids every night when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
And I remember I was asking, like, did you work hard at soccer practice? And I was like, I was asking these evaluative questions. And he was just like, yeah. And then you had to flip. So, but it's that
Yeah.
awareness of being able to name it that's so powerful. But kids, especially, just as adults, have the instinct to be important to somebody.
And I'm thinking of what you're saying is, I think I started my career working, well, I don't think I did, working in wilderness therapy and wilderness rec. And so a lot of ropes courses and this
Uh,
idea of like, if we want people to take risks, we need to tighten the rope. That
mm,
tightening of the rope of like feeling like, hey, there's a little bit of pull on me that's holding me up. So I know I can
yeah.
take that risk. And what I got from what you were just sharing there is when we show people that they matter and that they care, it tightens that rope. And when that rope is tight, then they'll swing out and reach for something that they wouldn't normally reach for.
Yeah, I
Right?
talk about this, and that instinct is, one of the most clear memories, vivid memories I have in my life as a person is when my I met my son for the first time, my 10-year-old, my first son. And I remember him like when I went down to reach down to him in the bassinet, I remember this grip like on my index finger, like so tightly. And right when he gripped my index finger, his whole body calmed.
Mm,
And as I was researching the power of mattering and researching the importance of mattering, it starts that early. Like
yeah.
having that anchor starts that early. That grip is called the grasp reflex. So
Yeah.
it's an automatic action that's encoded in us. It's been encoded in us for 6 million years to find a caring relationship, find someone to matter to enough so that person will keep us alive
Mm,
from the moment we're born. And that instinct is as strong and pervasive as the instinct to eat food or to sleep. And as we grow up, as children, we go to work, we go to school, that instinct doesn't go away. It drives almost every other psychological need that we have to
mm.
feel seen, to feel heard, to feel valued, to feel needed. And when we experience those things, that's called mattering. And, but I love that firm rope example because I also think it's the other way. Like imagine grasping out and finding no one.
Mm.
Imagine being dumped onto the rope course and knowing you're not clipped in. I think a lot of people feel that way in school and work right now, in life right now.
Well, and I think that inside of it is that grasping out, and the rope may be there. We're talking about traveling all the time. Is the care is often there, and I think one of the things that comes up a lot, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, is what I would call unintentional neglect.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't buy the plant and bring it home to intentionally forget to water it and nurture it and have it die. I tried to buy these are actually real plants, but I tried to find plastic ones because I'm like, I travel so much that I'll forget, and then they die, and I put the windows down so no sun comes in. But this unintentional neglect, if we get going so fast that
Ooh,
we forget to do those things, that,
yeah.
so what is your kind of take on, we know we should be doing these things, but our work and our environment is often pushing us to do the things that have us disconnect from people, that have
You
us
know,
look at false metrics.
I like thinking about like airline pilots, right? Like airline pilots who have a lot of hours, they're very experienced. They go onto a plane, but at any given moment, they know that there are tons of variables, weight on the plane, weather,
Yeah.
wind shear, all of that. So what do they have to do? When they get on the plane, they do the same checklist over and over.
Hmm.
If you they don't rely on their intuition or how they're feeling
Hmm.
or their the environmental conditions that day, they rely on some home base,
Yeah.
right? And usually that home base is a set of explicit practices that they can return to when the environment around them is wild, right?
Hmm.
So even if it's a thunderstorm in Denver in the summer and air traffic control is delaying you, you will hear them in the front doing the same thing. Check this button, check this, check that, check this, going through the checklist. We've approached soft skills like caring from a point of intuition for so long.
Hmm.
And we'll just get to it. We'll just do it. We'll just be a good person. If I buy the plant, I'll take care of the plant. There's a difference between caring about something and caring for something. Like you can care about your plant from afar, but caring for it means you have to get up close and deeply understand it, which means it takes time, it takes attention. The same is true with people. But intuition doesn't scale in our lives, meaning we can't replicate it in multiple situations because everything's pulling at our attention. Skills, habits, and practices scale. And what I mean by that is we have to have some basis of, okay, I'm entering into this conversation today. I
Hmm.
want to make sure I ask a question about a curiosity-based question.
Hmm.
I want to make sure that this person across from me leaves this conversation feeling seen, heard, valued, and needed. And the best way to get out of what's called automaticity, which is just going about your emotions and forgetting about the plant, is articulated intention. Having that checklist, having those practices, honing those skills so that you're not at the whim of your environment.
So I want to go back to the pilot analogy that I loved. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so why do pilots do this? Why do doctors do this? Why do people in high risk positions have checklists that they go through for their own safety? But why don't we tend to do that in a day-to-day interaction?
Yeah.
And so what I was just thinking in the back there is like the sociology researcher in myself is thinking, I'm okay, so why is it that those positions do this? But a manager of a team at a call center, or even the people in the back of the plane, right?
Hmm.
Like the flight crew and everything like that. And I think in many cases they are doing it because they're responsible for safety. Why is it that that perceived risk, because I'm up in a plane or I'm
Yeah.
going, we do it, or I'm opening up somebody's body, but then in the day to day, we don't emphasize that same checklist?
Yeah, I mean, because we think the stakes are higher with these big events,
Mm,
right? We tend to privilege talk about big events, even in leadership. Like if you go on LinkedIn, everybody talks about their big product launches, their big employee engagement reports or surveys or whatever their results. Nobody says, I remembered someone's full name today.
yeah.
Yet, we tend to think that leadership and relationships is about the big events. But you and I know, and everybody listening knows, think about the best relationships you've been in. They're the accumulation of small interactions
Yeah.
in which you feel seen, heard, valued, and needed. When we've asked thousands of people, when you most feel that you matter to a leader, what are they doing? We've never heard money. We've never heard
Never.
getting an award, getting a promotion. I was really like enamored by my leader's quarterly earnings report. We've never gotten that. All we get is like someone remembered that my parent was in the hospital,
Yeah.
and they proactively offered to allow me to take 3 hours in the morning just to be with myself. They remember a janitor I worked with said the most powerful moment in her 30-year career, the one that kept her there, and she was near homelessness. She had a lot of mental health struggles. The moment that kept her there, both there in the job and there in life,
Mhm.
was when a student, a building user, came into the building. She was a university janitor, looked her in the eye and just said, "Hey, Jane, I'm really glad to see you today." So there are these small moments that are trajectory changing for people, but we often overemphasize these big actions and neglect the small interactions. I'm not saying that you should have a rigorous like takeoff checklist for every
No.
conversation, but we should be able to name the ways in which we want to show up for another person in such a way that is as intentional as anything else we do in our lives, anything else that makes it on our to-do list. And unfortunately, again, we've called these things soft. If I tell you, hey, Chris, this is simple,
Mhm.
are you going to approach it with rigor? We don't. So when we call things soft, we have an overconfidence bias. And I will say that over the past 25 years, we've had a lot of social skill decay. We've become worse at these things.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
and I
I
would
don't
love
have
it.
to most out there are people out there right now. When you think of the fact that we send 30 to 40 text-based messages to colleagues a day, there's 38 million people on Slack right now messaging
Mhm.
as we're talking. There are people out there that have not had to show real compassion in real time to a human being in the last 5 years.
And what do you think? And so, right now in the current state of the world, we're recording this in September of 2025, right? In a time where there's probably more political division, there
Uh-huh.
is the introduction of, I don't even say the introduction, but the people's fears around AI, global conflict, and all the rest going on. And in a time where people will post something online with zero emotional consequence to the
Yeah,
other
right.
person, right? Where there's a disconnect in our communication. And we're talking about the importance of connecting and connecting in meaningful interactions when most of our interactions don't
Yep.
see the physical or emotional reaction on the other side. So what are your thoughts on that, and what you feel is missing right now that brings people out of that disconnected communication and invited into that human connection?
So first of all, I think a lot of the behaviors of division, of isolating oneself, of acting out and lashing out, I think we have to remember that these are usually symptoms of insignificance. For example, acting out and lashing out are usually ways of reaching out.
Mm,
Disobedience is usually disconnection when you get down to it. Most human behavior is the result of met or unmet needs.
mm,
And one of the things that data has been showing us as all of this is happening over the past decade is that as these things are happening, as we've been more divided, at the same time, we're feeling more invisible than ever.
mm.
I mean, upwards of 30% of employees at work say they feel quote unquote invisible or flat out ignored.
Yeah,
You look at that Gallup engagement report, right, that says we're more disengaged than ever. They're going to keep telling us that every decade,
it's not
but
going to change.
it's not going to change. But why is it not going to change? Well, there was two data points in that survey they finally reported on, and that was that just 39% of people said that someone at work cared for them as a person. Just 30% said someone invested in their unique potential. 8 out of 10 people experience at least one feeling of loneliness per week, right? But a lot of us have thought that the solution to loneliness is to connect more. So we're like in more meetings. We have more. We're more connected than ever, but we're lonelier than ever. And the reason is because it's not the lack of social contact that predicts loneliness. It's the lack of perceived social value to others that predicts loneliness. It's not the quantity of the communication, it's the quality. Now, this is all happening,
Yeah.
and I'll get to this. Hold on. This is
Yep.
all happening as our social skills have decayed when we need them more than ever. And so when people don't feel that they matter, so I believe that we're not facing a disengagement crisis, loneliness epidemic, technology addiction. I actually don't think there's more political division than there has been in history and like the Nixon era and things like that. I think that what we're facing is more people feel insignificant during that time than ever. We're facing a mattering deficit. And when people don't feel that they matter, two things happen. They isolate, they withhold, or they leave, or they act out in desperation. Like workplace gossip. And this ties into the division we're seeing. Workplace gossip. One of the number one predictors of workplace gossip is not a toxic employee. It's called psychological contract violation. This is a fancy word that means my fair treatment has been violated by you, a leader usually. So I'm going to speak out and find a way to matter enough to somebody, even if it's on negative grounds. Now, let's look at the social division. Let's look at the Reddit subforums. Let's look at what's happening. People are desperate to matter. Desperate to matter. And all of that's happening in an age of AI where the like AI can do our tasks, it can't take responsibility for them. AI can't be accountable to human beings. So like AI could do this conversation right now with like AI versions of us, but it can't be accountable for what we say, the impact it has on others. So this moral responsibility, we're going to be craving it more than ever. I don't think it's the age of AI. I think it's the age of trust. I think more people are going to be craving human trust. And here we are at this moment where that's why I think these interactional skills are more important than ever, why the World Economics Forum 2030 most in-demand skills now are curiosity, empathy, and understanding. And so that's actually my short answer to that question of how we got here and what's happening.
Well, and I think we often get these kind of, well, like my brain went in 5 places when you just answered that. And I'm like trying to
But
pick
it's so
which one I want to go on.
This is not, there's no like straightforward, this is what's happening podcast
No,
answer to that
there
question.
isn't. And I think that what I love about what you're sharing, my background's international conflict resolution. So I used to design and facilitate cross-border dialogue programs. And there's something that would happen in every interaction where people would be coming in position-based, right? And what you're saying is that, hey, when someone's reaching out, when they're reacting, when they're frustrated, when they're complaining, is a cry to be seen, right? And it's always like one of the things we're always talking about is that behind every complaint is a hidden commitment. And so what's the commitment of that person who's speaking out and complaining? I was on my flight yesterday. I always interview the flight crew when I go to the bathroom and start asking them questions. And they're going through contract negotiations right now. And they're like, I'm like, what does the organization do that has you feel valued? Well, that's funny time you ask it right now because they're not doing this, that we haven't gotten a raise in 10 years. We're working harder. We're moving. And then afterwards, slowly, like what has me feel valued is when somebody who's flying, a passenger hands me a $5 Starbucks gift card, when somebody appreciates me and lets the company know. And those small actions where there's my overall experience and then there's being seen. And the challenge is in so many workplaces, people work in environments where they're not seen because they're disconnected. And so in your book, you tell a story about a truck driver, a female truck driver that really stuck out of the little girl on the side of the road, seeing her drive by. And that's the moment where she felt significant. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on when people are working in these operational settings and they may be disconnected from their manager and people are working remotely and they're away and maybe in many cases, people are 100 employees reporting to one manager or supervisor.
Yeah.
What do people do to ensure that their people feel mattered in that kind of context?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a great observation and a great observation with the flight attendants. It is these small interactions that matter most. And it's usually not about adding more to your plate. Like a lot of leaders are like, oh, I have so many people, I got to add more to our plate. It's usually about optimizing the interactions you already have, right? If you're a leader right now and you called your direct report out of the blue
Mhm.
right now, today, in the middle of the day, what do you think their first reaction would be? Honestly, if you think it would be fear or anxiety,
Mhm.
it's not doesn't mean that you're a bad leader. It means that too many of your interactions are transactional. Like
Mhm.
you're asking for things from somebody too much so that when somebody sees your name show up, they're saying, "Oh shoot, something must be wrong," or that they want something from me.
Yeah.
In no other relationship is that normal, healthy, or acceptable, right? So one of the things I think that is
I'm not
important,
going to make any observations about my wife. No.
yeah, but I know. I know. Sometimes I get myself into trouble with my work too. But um, the thing that we think about is these small interactions matter. One of the things that I encourage people to do, if especially in their fast-paced roles, is to optimize in between moments.
Mm.
So Claude Debussy, the composer, wrote, "Music is the space between the notes."
Mm.
Right? The notes are the big things in our organizations, the rituals, the one-on-ones, the things we spend so much time planning, the leadership events, the in-service days, all of these big things. But your culture, in my experience, in my practice, is actually built in these in-between moments. So it's that moment that someone jumps on a virtual call a couple minutes early, and instead of shutting off your camera and opening up some tabs and firing off a few extra emails, keeping your camera on and saying, "Oh, hey, Chris, I remembered last week you were nervous about that meeting. I just wanted to quickly check in on how that
Mm.
went." Or like if you're remote and I noticed that, Chris, you're frustrated, instead of, I mean, literally, technology has made it easier to unsee people. So
Mm.
there's literally right now a leave button here, like with someone walking out the door. So if you were frustrated in this call, I can literally click leave and forget about you. That is not normal. That's
Yeah.
not how we're built to communicate. So if I notice you're frustrated, instead of just letting it go because I have so much to do, a 30-second phone call where you say, hey, Chris, I noticed that you were frustrated. Is that right?
Mm.
Is just opening the door to help people feel seen. I mean, so
But Zach,
these
if I ask that question, it's going to open up a conversation. It's going to take three
oh
hours. We're
yeah, I
never
know.
going to get to our meeting.
Yeah.
So,
But it's
so
just those little things. Hey, okay, hey, and let's I know I have a couple minutes right now. I just want to check and see if you're doing okay. I noticed that you were frustrated. Oh yeah, they go on and on and on. Hey, can we schedule a call
mm,
next Tuesday at 8? And I just want to follow up on this conversation. Let's just do that now. Let's just put it on our calendars now. What happens is that the leaders that I see that do this really well is they protect this space to see their people.
mm,
They actually like protect the space on their calendar to write the thank you notes. Doug Conan, who used to be the CEO of Campbell's, used to write thank you notes to thousands of people, and he had these days blocked on his calendar. Like you protect that space. You schedule your good intentions. So when you have that thought, you should check in with somebody. When you have that thought, you could send a thank you, show gratitude, remind someone how they're needed. Put it on your to-do list, put it on your calendar. Protect that space with as much rigor as you protect the space of your budget meeting, and the budget meeting will go better. Because a lot of people say, I don't want to open up a can of worms with all this. The worms are already in the can, I mean, so there's nothing more inefficient in the long term than someone feeling misunderstood.
oh man, there was three things just came up there in my mind. So two things I want to pull out of what you just shared right there is the intention that I care for you more than this one interaction that we're in. Right.
Yeah.
And that putting that line of I'm going to follow up with you later. And I love I'm a big fan of bringing back the impromptu phone call, calling
Yes.
people without a scheduled time and changing. Because before you were saying, it's like, hey, do people receive calls from you and they think there's immediately something wrong? And so if we want to break that pattern of behavior, we need to create times where they're not having that experience. Hey,
Yes.
I'm just calling to check in and see how you're doing. And setting the intention right from the start to remove the concern of, oh crap, why am I getting this call? Right? Or sending messages that are just showing, hey, I appreciate you now. And my wife once got a call from the CEO and it came into our car. And so it said, Dan, CEO. And he was calling. He's like, hey, I heard that you had to let a couple of people go today. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing.
Oh, wow.
And it lasted 1 minute and 57 seconds.
but he had a skill. He had to think about it. He had to set aside the time and he had to do it.
Well, and he did it, but it's like we always forget that there's times in our days, like I know, and for the folks who have kids, you have school drop off, school pickup. You have the 15 minutes while you're waiting for the bus. You have the 15 minutes while you're driving to the airport. And one of the things I always do is, okay, whoever I think of, and this is the beauty of ADD, where it's just like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just thought of so-and-so. I'm going to send them a message right now. How are they doing? And that ability to send that where they get a track record of positive intentions with you or interactions with you that then compound over time, but it's putting in our radar to do it. So what are some of your things that have people realize the importance of prioritizing this to the ones who always minimize it?
Yeah, I think naming it is important. Like for example, I'm not very good at thinking in the moment to do something. So I'm like usually in the moment, very distracted by what's happening around me. So if I'm like walking to my car after I drop the kids off at school, I'm like talking to the crossing guard, and I'm in the moment.
Yeah.
But so one of the things that I do is like I write on the top of my one-on-ones, don't forget to ask about dot dot dot. Right. It's just a little cue that reminds me. I write things down. So I actually think on Fridays, I try to think of conversations that there were some things left unsaid that week that I need to follow up on and what I want to follow up on. And I'll connect with you and say, sometimes I'll send an email and say, hey, I know we had that conversation about that meeting. There was a couple of things that were unresolved about the event that we're working on. Do you want to hop on a call today and just check on that? And the response is like, oh my gosh, someone thought about me when I wasn't there. Like, which is the ultimate of being a human, right? But I have to write it down. I have to put it on my to-do list. I actually block time on my calendar. If I'm going to write a thank you note, I will put a 10-minute block, write thank you note to so-and-so. And then in the note section of my Microsoft To-Do, I will write what I'm thanking them for, like specifically. And it's not that it's robotic. It just helps optimize my environment to do it. One woman that I worked with in a distribution center, she had a noticing notebook, we've come to call it, where she would write down all her team members' names. She has 22 team members. She'd write down all their names on Fridays, and she writes down one thing she really wanted to remember about them that week. So if it was a piece of equipment that was broken, she would write it down. And on Friday, she would look at that list, and on Monday, she would do a schedule in her mind, a 3-minute check-in with each person on something she wrote down. She never told them that, but she would go to someone and be, hey, Chris, I remember last week you were struggling with this piece of equipment. Did we get that fixed for you? Yeah. And she gave me a line. All that I've learned, the research is great, but what I've learned most is from leaders who are innovative at doing this. Yeah, but they're innovative. Like this noticing notebook was innovative, I think. She would go to somebody and say, hey, Chris, I wrote down last week that you were struggling with this piece of equipment. Did we get that fixed for you? And she said to me this line. She said, Zach, I've realized in my leadership journey there's magic in being remembered. 100%. And so like noting, putting it on your calendars, adding little cues in your environment to do it. Because if your environment doesn't remind you to do this stuff, as you know, it will remind you to do other stuff.
Well, and I think that's when I hear somebody is going through a health concern or they lost their job, I immediately put onto my Friday reminders to check in with those people and what it is they're going through. And that's the cue every week. It's reoccurring once a week. It comes up. And then that reminds me to check in. Hey, I know they were going through chemotherapy. Hey, I know they just lost their job and they were interviewing. And I just have that as a cue to remind me, because when you talk about remembering, like I always think of like the pyramids. It matters so much that somebody enslaved a population to build these giant monuments to make sure they weren't forgotten.
Wow.
Like, it matters that much. And if you think about how much people need to be cared for, and that one little piece of remembering that detail, but very people are like, well, Chris, I remember stuff, but I don't remember the person's name. I'm like, great, say that. Hey, I don't remember your name, but last week we talked about this and I never forgot that. Or last week I saw you do something, and because I think that, I don't know about you, but one thing that I notice is the actions are really simple. Getting people out of the discomfort to take them is really what we're navigating. And I think the cue to remind people, it doesn't need to be some deep, meaningful conversation every time. We're like, Zach, how are you doing this week?
Absolutely.
Right? And I was like, many times I'm like, just give them a fist bump, or just say, I'm happy you're here, or a wink across the room, or just ask me about my day, or how are the kids? And I'm like, that's enough. It's like,
You asked me a great question at the beginning of this call. You said, "What were you doing 5 minutes before this?"
yeah,
Right? But that's also a skill to learn the question. I think a lot of the defensiveness and the barrier to doing it actually comes from a lack of ability, right?
yeah,
And a lack of skill development. Like that takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of testing out those questions. Probably the first time you asked a deeper question like that,
yeah.
as you're noticing probably there was a gap at the beginning of your virtual calls, it was probably a little bit awkward, right? I mean, so I think that we have to learn like there are ways we can ask better questions. I also tell people like when I'm doing like a workshop with people, I'm saying just blame everything on me or this material
Yeah.
and share your good intentions. So if you never are someone that asks about the details of people's work or their life, and you're going to start doing that because you realize that people need to feel that they matter,
Yeah.
you don't want to go in and just start doing that. You want to
You attended
say,
a leadership development thing, didn't you?
yeah, yeah, right. Or I always know when someone just went to active listening training because they're always going, uh-huh, yeah, or looping things back. What I hear you saying is, right, that's not right, that's good. But what I would do is say, hey, I've come to understand that I need to check in more on how you all are doing. I don't really know the best way to do that yet, but I'm going to be asking some different questions. And let me know if that's working. Right. And
And I
it's
think
and
this,
it's being able to share that good intention is actually an intervention itself.
and I think it's interesting. There's a leader that I'm working with right now in manufacturing, and he's like, I'm an introvert. And I said, great, stop trying to say the right thing. Take all the work off you, and we forget
Yeah.
that the question does all the work. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, if you just ask the question, just have your three go-to questions. What are you working on that excites you? What do you do that
Yes.
nobody sees? And
Yeah.
you're inviting people, and it's a mentor of mine, Dr. Mark Goldstein, who sadly passed away recently. It's like
Mm.
one of my all-time favorite quotes. It's less important what we say to others than what we empower others to say to us. And feeling seen. And one thing that I found when I was doing my research on recognition is that I could try to say the right thing to you about what I appreciate, and you could still be like, yeah, that's not that important to me, or I
Yeah.
don't care, or I
Right.
disagree. But if I invite you to tell me what matters most to you, or what do
Ah.
you want to be recognized for, then the brain removes the
Yeah.
filter. And once I realize you care about my answer, then all of a sudden, what I share to you is what I care about. And it's like, hey, what do you want for your birthday? And then you get it. You're like, oh my God, I got it. And it's like, I'm just giving you what you
Uh-huh.
want. But the question invites the person to tell you what they want to be seen for and what has them feel mattered.
The question that I encourage leaders to ask is their people, anybody who's in any relationship to ask the other person is, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing?
Mm.
When you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? I actually got interviewed for this magazine article. The article never got published, so I don't know if I was a bad interview or what. But
You
the
have too much value, Zach, too
the
much value.
journalist, yeah, yeah, the journalist and I started talking afterwards, and she said, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I'm having trouble connecting with her. Do you have any advice for me? This is always like the best part of these interviews, usually. And I said, why don't you ask her when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? And
Mm.
really listen. And a couple weeks went by, and I got this long email and back from her. And she says, I asked my daughter, and she told me that it was when I drive her to school, and we're sitting in the car when we're just playing her favorite music, and
Mm.
we're just sitting with each other.
Mm.
And she said, I always thought that that was just a chore for me. I always thought that she was being silent because she didn't like me anymore, didn't want to talk to me. She was just being a curmudgeon teenager.
Mm.
But it was actually just being with me, listening to my favorite music that was most important to her. And I overlooked that. And it just was one of those moments of pause for me that so often, if we don't ask that question, if we don't see how the people in our lives feel that they matter to us, and we don't really explicitly investigate that, we
Mm.
might never know that these small things that we do are actually everything to someone.
Mm. And I think inside of it, what you're sharing there is this invitation that people are often scared to ask the question because they're worried to hear the answer. And I think
Mm.
that by asking it, and it's funny you shared this because yesterday somewhere I heard someone say, hey, and maybe it was something in an interview I was watching of yours preparing, but I just asked my daughter on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing as a dad?
Mm.
And she went 9.5. And I'm like, I feel like I'm more of like a 7. She's like, yeah, it's probably better. But I could tell she was hesitant. And then I shared, I'm like, what am I doing that has you feel that way? What are some of the things that have moved that number down? And she's like, Papa, I was just going to bed. And I was like, okay, but what is it? And she goes, sometimes you're on your phone too much. You travel too much for work. Sometimes I feel like you're distracted when you're with me. And I'm like, what are the things that I do when I have you post values? Like when you go outside and play volleyball with me, when we listen to music in the car, and I feel like the moment of asking people how we're doing and invite them to give feedback to us shows that we care about how we're showing up for them. And I feel like that little kind of, I want to be better for you by inviting you to let me know how to do that. And that's what I love about the question you're saying about like, what do I do that has you feel like you matter to me? And I didn't get the question right. So say the question one more time.
It's pretty much the same. I mean, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it gets into also behavior. And I think that, as we're talking about these parenting relationships, I think this is actually what's missing in all of our relationships right now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're not going to ask your grocery store clerk, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? But you can say their name.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, hey, I know this has got to be a pretty hard job. I just want to thank you for being here.
Mm.
What has your attention today? Like, what are you thinking about? What's on your mind as you're checking out? Like, it's those little interactions, I believe, that is the only thing that can really like heal our society,
Yeah.
is one interaction at a time. If our society won't get better until our interactions get better. I'm really obsessed lately. There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of leadership advice out there. It's at the programmatic operating system cultural level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perks, programs. Here's a new system. Here's something you can apply to people. I am obsessed with that. Our answer to most of our crises of our times relies at the interactional level. That we have to show up better with one another. And if we all commit to that, if we all learn these skills, and we found there's 3 of them that help people feel that they matter. If we all commit to noticing, affirming, showing people how they're needed by us, I believe that that's how change happens.
And I couldn't agree more. And the thing that was really interesting when I was doing my research is that I could just see that when people feel valued, feedback's a contribution. When people feel valued, it's criticism or an attack.
Absolutely.
And that small interaction, and I think that we've gotten so used to spitting out positions at each other and defending our positions. And the challenge is, I think that our culture is a reflection of our leadership, and how people are acting gives permission for other people to act that way. And I think we're incentivized to what gets more attention is what gets more clicks, and anger gets more clicks. And so I think figuring out how do we re-incentivize that kindness gets more clicks, and it's not good for business. And how do we do that if we understand that doesn't work in society? Because I've never met 2 people that couldn't connect as humans if they took time to first connect as humans before they went into the conversation about their views. Because if I see your view, then I make up a story about what you feel about me. And we forget that no one's going to ever feel connected to if they feel made wrong. And if I said, right, and what I get in your book is it's just like like the best step-by-step guide for being a better human being. Right? Is it inside it just shows, and not step by step like you follow this, but it's just this reminder of this is what this looks like. This is how you tweak your question to have this feel better. This is the things that are going to make the biggest difference for your family, for your coworkers, and for yourself when you get this. Because when you learn this, do this for others, right? You get more of it back to you.
You mentioned like leadership sets the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot right now. There's a lot of control. There's a lot of fear-based leadership out there. But we have to understand, why do people control? Psychologically, people control when they can't connect. People control what they don't understand. So why do you think the rise of autocracies also correspond to the rise of economic, cultural volatility?
Hmm.
It's because when something's complex, we try to control it.
Hmm.
When people, we can't understand people, we try to control it. We try to use fear.
Yeah.
Fear has a very short half-life. Fear lasts for a few months on average. But trust that's built on care lasts much longer. You know, one of the things we've gotten wrong about work in the Western world is we've thought that people should be valued once they add value.
Mm.
So be valued once they add value, yes.
Yeah, I see that coming up.
But the opposite psychologically is true. I mean, in all the psychological research, people have to feel valued to add value,
Hmm.
right? When we feel worthy, when we feel capable, we have the confidence we need to add value to perform, produce, innovate. The more we do those things, the more someone shows us the impact of those things, the more we feel valued. And that's the cycle that leads to sustained motivation, sustained engagement, sustained performance. All of those lagging indicators that leaders say they care about are all lagging indicators of the leading indicator, which is human energy.
Hmm.
And nobody would have done anything today if at some small level they didn't believe that they matter.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have gotten up. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the animator of human behavior. And investing in that is truly investing in the leading indicator, which lasts much longer than fear. Because the same people that are using fear and control and mandates and iron fists right now are
Hmm.
going to be calling you and I in 5 years when the labor market gets more employee favorable and asking, why does nobody want to work anymore? Why are we in a great resignation? Right? Because when people feel replaceable, they act replaceable. They'll leave just like that.
It's interesting because there's, I'm working, yeah, I was working with a call center 2 days ago that, is struggling with, okay, what's going to happen to us with AI? And other folks are looking like, hey, it looks like the economy's about to tank, or hey, it looks like we're going into a war. And I was like, these things aren't great, but I'm excited that they're coming because I feel like each change is an opportunity that reminds people to slow down. And each
Mm,
time there's like when things are going really well, it's easy to forget to do the day-to-day things. And when things start
mm,
going bad, right, and it tightens, if I think of some of the best times in my life was 2008, I learned to bake bread at home. I learned to cook better because I had no income. My wife and I both lost our jobs. We had just gotten married. And when did we connect more? During that time. If I think of the time when I
yeah,
was
yeah.
closest with my family, I was living in Santiago, Chile when the pandemic hit, and we were locked in our apartment for 4 months straight. We couldn't even go for a
Wow.
walk. And man, did I like it at the time? No. But did I spend more time with my daughter? Did I learn to play with my daughter more? Did I spend more time with my wife? Was I healthier then because I had nothing else to do?
Mm.
Right? It's many of those times of change that spark the opportunity to rethink how we're working and interacting. And I'm excited for what's coming forward. What are you most excited about in the months ahead, Zach?
Well, I was going to say something.
Go
I'm
ahead, go
I'm
ahead, go
I'm
wherever you want to
actually
go.
people ask me about AI because you mentioned it, you brought it up.
Yeah,
I'm actually excited about AI, and I'll
yeah,
tell you why. I'm excited that it's going to take over our operational and technical skills
yeah.
because we'll actually have to focus on what makes us who we are, which is being human.
Hmm.
I was working with a big brand who was really proud of their AI bot that was guiding customers through transactions. And I asked the question I posed earlier, but I asked the question, I was like, who takes responsibility for the transaction? Who takes moral accountability for the human being at the end of the transaction? And there was this massive realization that they actually thought they were going to need less people, but they needed more people who are good at cultivating the relationship in addition to the chat bot doing the operational stuff because people were going to realize that the AI does not care about them. It cannot care for you. You cannot automate, replicate human care. And so what's going to happen, I think, is that more and more people are going to be interacting with AI and they're going to start realizing, as they already are with some of the things that have been published about people using AI as therapists that haven't
Hmm.
gone well and other implications of AI. I think people are going to start realizing that they crave human trust. They crave human care. And that's why I think the skills to build that trust, empathy, compassion, curiosity, understanding, the things that we're talking about here today, I think those are going to be the quintessential skills for people who don't want to lose their jobs to AI. Because if you can't build human trust, you will lose your job to AI. If you can't build a caring relationship, you will lose your job to AI. If your organization can't do that, you will lose customers. So I'm actually pretty excited
Hmm.
that AI is actually revealing to us our indispensability. And all of this work that we're doing, like come on, the 2030 most in-demand skills of the World Economic Forum, usually it's stuff that I can't even pronounce or some
Yeah.
coding thing.
Yeah.
Curiosity, understanding, uh, empathy, right? Are the most in-demand job skills. They're also the things we learn in kindergarten. Isn't that beautiful?
Well, and it's like I feel like it's just like the generic storyline of every book. Like, is it Paul Coelho where it's like the alchemist, and you like go around the world and on all these adventures only to end up exactly where you started.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like this. I just feel like there's the same common things, and it's like humanity throughout history. If you look at faith, if you look at anything, it's the same basic tendency,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like we keep on needing to be the people to bring people back to the common
Yeah.
sense that is in the common practice, right? And it's that reminder. And, for you, as we've seen, and I've got a wall of leadership books over here and lessons and
Uh-huh.
everything like that, all saying, kind of the same kind of thing in a different way over the years. What's the one thing from your work that you really hope just sinks in and it, has staying power over in the future?
Yeah, so you talked about coming back. Like that gives me great language for this because I'm excited because I think that we have an opportunity to come back to who we are and how we're built. One of the things that I hope that the book does is I hope it gives people a name for something.
Yeah.
Because when we can name something, we can change it.
Mhm.
That initial primal survival instinct, we have a name for eating, we have a name for sleeping. That initial survival instinct to
Mhm.
be important to somebody is called mattering.
Yeah.
And it's different than belonging. It's different than inclusion. Like belonging is feeling welcomed and connected in a group. Inclusion is feeling that you can take an active role in a group. Mattering is feeling that the group wouldn't be complete without you.
Yeah.
Mattering is knowing that your presence and absence means something to just one other person.
Mhm.
Um, and it is this quintessential survival instinct that's so common sense that we've forgotten to talk about it, just like we don't explicitly talk about eating or sleeping, but we know when it's absent.
Yeah.
And I think people are finally being able to name, gosh, I have felt like I belonged. I felt like I'm included. I feel like I'm doing good work. I feel like I'm doing work that matters, but I don't experience mattering in my job. I don't feel significant. I don't have that firm rope. I've reached out and found nobody. I'm in a room with people and feel completely invisible. And then I hope the realization is that we can do something about these big problems
Mm.
in our next interaction.
Yeah.
You don't have to do something big. You will not, you're likely won't be remembered for your big actions. You'll be remembered for what you do in your next interaction. And so if I can get people to start thinking at an interaction by interaction level
Mhm.
about leadership and getting people to make the choice, the conscious choice to show up in their next interaction and ensure the person across from them feels seen, heard, valued, and understood, I think that's a big win. And it helps us come back to who we are.
Zach, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for
Thank you. Yeah,
the
this is
work and the
great.
research you're doing and everything it took to bring all that together to be able to make the difference. Where can people, well, I have it up here on your website there, but where can people find more about you, your work? Where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, head to zachmercurio.com. That's a great one. If you want to read more about the power of mattering, but you don't want to read the whole book, there's a great HBR article called The Power of Mattering at Work. That's like a really good
Study.
yeah, that one's about
It's
high
funny. You and
performers.
I are in
Yes.
the same book. You're like, we're on the same page and the table of contents. And I was like, how do we not know each other?
Yeah, so that one's related to high performers, but there's a great idea of what this is, how it's different, and how to do it in everyday interactions. I mean, and I think that awareness is good. And you know what? I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
I don't care what book you read, as long as you're doing it. And I think that that's what's most important.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Chris.